Summer routines live or die by how easy they are. And honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
Welcome back. You have found us here on Wooden Sticks. We are broadcasting from the Aquarius Home Services studio. My name is Kevin Gorg. Really appreciate you taking time to join us today as we head through the middle part of summer, and hockey season is year-round, as everybody knows. So we keep the fire burning, and it won't be long, and we'll be at training camp, and I'm looking forward to another great season with the Wild, approaching 2 decades on the job as the reporter over there. And we've got some wonderful guests lined up here to close out the summer, including today with Krissy Wendell-Pohl, dear friend of mine, played locally at Park Center, played at the University of Minnesota, of course, for the Golden Gophers. She won a Ms. Hockey Award for the Pirates, and then would go on to win the Hobie Baker on the women's side with the Patty Kazmaier Award in 2005, played for Team USA in a couple of different Winter Olympics, and she's going into the Hockey Hall of Fame next hockey season, which is a huge, huge deal. So her and her family will be heading up to Toronto. Married to Johnny Pohl, of course. They've got 3 daughters. They're just both hockey legends. And as great as they were on the ice, and they were 2 of the very, very best in Minnesota high school hockey history on the ice, they're better off the ice. They're tremendous, tremendous human beings, down to earth, humble, exactly what you'd hope they would be, right? They're the kind of leaders and superstars that you would want your kids to identify as role models. That's who Johnny and Krissy are. So when I got the word that Krissy was going into the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, I was just ecstatic. And known her for a long time, lucky enough to work with her at Bally Sports. She's done some work with us on the broadcast side. She's just an incredible person, and she's just great at telling stories. Like, she doesn't give herself enough credit on the broadcast side. She's incredible at this. She goes in other directions, right? She's coaching. She's in administration. She's a scout now for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, she can basically do whatever she wants in the game of hockey, but I'm telling you, she's a tremendous broadcaster. That'll come out in our show today. You'll feel the comfort and the stories and just the way she's able to approach it. She's got a real cool way about her, and really looking forward to finding out how a Hockey Hall of Famer gets that type of news. I mean, that is not something you're sitting on or expecting or waiting for. To get that call has got to be a life-changing event all by itself. And then just to go back to where it all began, the great athlete she was. When she played at Park Center, I was coaching Mounds View, and I was the boys' high school coach for the Mustangs. When we played Park Center, she was on the boys' team. That's where she started, and she was good. It wasn't a token spot. Like, she was a good player. And she would go on, obviously, when the girls' game took off, to lead Park Center to a girls' state championship. She also played in the Little League World Series, and that is one of my very favorite sporting events on the calendar every year. And she was the starting catcher and the 5th ever girl to play in the Little League World Series. So I can't wait to ask her questions about that experience. It'll be an awesome, awesome conversation today with the newly minted Hall of Famer, Krissy Wendell-Pohl. And I'm going to tell you, one of my very favorite humans on the planet. So I'm super excited for that. But let's just take a deep breath and kind of reflect at where we are here in the world of hockey, at least locally. The Wild have kind of made their moves now. They're settled in, as we've wrapped up that conversation with Joe O'Donnell on our most recent episode of Wooden Sticks. And now we just sit back and hope that everybody comes into training camp ready to go. And we're in late July, so we've got another month to kind of get through, and then it starts to really ramp up when the players head into town. And some of the things I'll be watching for as we get a little closer to September, and then the preseason starts, and all of a sudden it's October, and we drop the puck for real, is that goaltending battle. I'm intrigued by that. Clearly the Wild didn't make a move. The Gus Bus will be back. We know that Marc-Andre Fleury will be back. And then the role of Jesper Wallstedt and his continuation of his maturity process as he tries to get into that position at some point to be one of the starting goaltenders. I think, again, he'll start in Iowa, and it'll depend a lot on how the two guys that are here play. But even during training camp, how many preseason games does each goalie get? I think the one thing the Wild are concerned about is getting off to a better start. Bill Guerin has made that abundantly clear that the start last year really put them in a bad spot for the entire balance of the season. A part of that was due to injuries. Jared Spurgeon got hurt in Chicago in one of the final preseason games on the calendar, and that really slowed that process down. But they want to hit the ground running, and now I think with the latest news that their former bench boss and Dean Evison getting the job at Columbus, that is the home opener. I think the Wild played the Blue Jackets twice in the first 5 games on the slate, so that's going to be intriguing as well. I had a chance this week to connect with Coach Evison via text. He's super excited, and I loved in his press conference when they asked him about his first official game as the head coach of the Blue Jackets will be in St. Paul against the Wild, and he said, it's funny. He said these other coaches that are asked this question always downplay it like it's just another game, and he said that's BS. It's total bull, and he meant to say bullshit, of course. But if you know Dean, you know what I'm talking about. And he got down to the root of it. Listen, they fired me, and I know I'm a good coach, and I want to come back and I want to win the game. And so I love that he's able to just get to that spot where, like, yeah, obviously this is a big deal. And so for the opening game to be Dean Evison coming back to St. Paul, I think that just adds another layer of excitement for the season to get going. I want to see how the young guys progress. Liam Ogren, to me, really showed NHL potential. The way he shoots the puck, and now is he able to kind of use his body, use his speed to get to open ice. Training camp will be a good place to take another step for him, including the preseason, but he intrigues me a bunch. And then to see Brock Faber validate what he did last year. I'm not going to be surprised when he does it, but I know he played through some injuries, and I know it was a very, very taxing year for him mentally and physically, and now you've got that deep breath and come back, and now let's just become the player we're going to be. I still think there's upside there because he's so young, but he had an awfully good year. And, people talk about the sophomore slump. It's a real thing in sports. You finally get there and prove yourself. Now, can you validate that? I think that's one of the things that Philip Gustafson struggled with last year. So we'll be watching that, see how that blue line comes together now that they're healthy again. Spurgeon and Brodin, and how that whole thing mixes together with Middleton, how they play that out. And then just some of the battles that I think are going to be for those middle 6 spots on the roster. And will Freddie Gaudreau have a bounce-back year? Can Ryan Hartman have a more consistent year? He's still plugged in 25 goals, but I think if you look at his talent and the potential he brings in certain scenarios to be a top 6 guy, Ryan Hartman can be a regular 30-goal scorer on this team, and I think they would love to see that. I think he's got plenty of potential and will be given that opportunity. And then I just think the continued progress of Matt Boldy, that's going to be a key for Kirill Kaprizov. I think every superstar in this league, start with McDavid and Draisaitl and work your way down through most of these rosters. I think of Crosby and Malkin. There's a 1 and a 1A, right? There's not just one driving force offensively, and the production that Matt Boldy can give this hockey team, and he got off to a really slow start last year, and I think that was a big part of their slump as well. Can he be consistently good on the offensive side of the puck to help Kirill Kaprizov? These are all things that I think in the next 4, 5, 6 weeks will percolate, and then we'll finally get to training camp and have a chance to watch it play out. And that's kind of where my mind is at as we get to the end of July here and page forward to what lies ahead. On the show next week, it's going to be Alex Stalock, a longtime friend of mine, and as you know, superstar athlete locally here, back to his days playing at what is now Doug Woog Arena. It was Wakota back when he played there for South St. Paul, going on to play for the Bulldogs at UMD, and then a great career on the pro side that included a stop with the Minnesota Wild. So we'll look forward to Alex Stalock on the show next week. But today it's all about the new Hall of Famer. That's right. Krissy Wendell will be coming up shortly here on Wooden Sticks. And folks, got to thank our great sponsors. And, when you think of the Freemasons out there, you're going to think of all those, secret handshakes and those goofy hats and, of course, the pancake breakfast. But Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer you think about the work they do here in our community. And because of my good friend John Schweitz, I get a good look at some of the things that they do, whether it's the Cancer Center, the Children's Hospital, or the Masonic Home over in Bloomington. They are plugged in every day and giving back to where it really matters here. Freemasons support everybody in Minnesota, the largest fraternal organization, in fact, in the world. So think about them and think about John Schweitz. And I'm really excited that Minnesota Masonic Charities has chosen Wooden Sticks as one of their platforms to help spread that word. And we'll look for more great updates from Schweitty and Minnesota Masonic Charities in the coming future. And after this quick break, we look forward to a hockey conversation with new Hall of Famer Krissy Wendell-Pohl. Welcome back to Wooden Sticks. We're recording from the Aquarius Home Services studio, and it is my honor and pleasure to be joined by a hockey legend and a dear friend of mine, Krissy Wendell-Pohl. And Krissy, first off, thanks for taking the time to join me, and congratulations on the news of the summer. In my opinion, you are going into the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. That is just incredible.
Thanks, Gorgie. It's good to chat again. Kind of been off and about the last couple of years since we worked together, but thank you. It's been pretty exciting. A little bit surprised. It's starting to sink in a little bit, but certainly still has that feel of shock to it.
How do you get the news? How does that whole thing come about?
Yeah, so actually it was in Las Vegas for draft meetings. So working part-time with Pittsburgh, and we were getting ready for the draft down in Las Vegas. And first day of meetings, and like an hour into our meetings, and I got a number from 416, kept calling, and I was like, oh man, that's weird. Hope everything's good with the kids at home, although that's Toronto. And finally got a text from Kelly, just Moss, who works for the Hockey Hall of Fame, was like, hey, give us a call when you get a chance. And so then I stepped out of the room and got a chance to answer the phone call from Lanny, and you're never really expecting that call, so the shock value was incredibly high, and my head was kind of spinning a little bit, but certainly really cool.
Take me through the first couple of calls or texts that you make once you get that news to let friends and family know that you're going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, it was so funny because I think I was so shocked. I just still trying to process it by the time I got back into the room. And I had to go right back into the rooms because we were literally like day one of meetings. So I had stepped out just to take the call. And then I went back into the room, and I was trying to just text my husband, Johnny, and he was on the ice, so I couldn't get a hold of him. And then I just kind of left it and went right back into like draft meetings mode. And then I did reach out to my parents and just kind of gave them a heads up. And my parents aren't super tied into the whole hockey scene. And so they were like, oh, that's cool. Like, okay, cool. And then they just kind of left it. And then like an hour, so we only got a call about an hour and a half or so before it went public. And so I happened to be in the meetings with my Pittsburgh team, and I had let Kyle Dubas know, and then the director of our scouting at the time, Nick Pryor, as well know, just because I had to take some stuff in the afternoon. But it got released while we were in meetings. So Kyle announced it to the group, and it was kind of special just to kind of share that a little bit with the guys that I was working with at the time. So pretty cool.
Yeah, really cool, actually. And have you been to Toronto? Have you actually been to the Hall of Fame?
You know what's funny? I think I have. It's been so long. So we actually, so Johnny played up there for 3 years, and I lived up there. We got married. We actually got engaged in Toronto, and then, nice. Which is kind of funny. And then we lived up there for a couple of years together when he was with the Maple Leafs. And I'm pretty sure we walked through it, but I honestly, I can't even really remember it super detailed.
Well, I got to tell you, it's a special place. I've been lucky enough through my travels with the Wild to get there and spend full days, like if we have an off day, wandering around the Hall of Fame. And there's a mock locker room of one of the original Montreal Canadian rooms at the Forum with all the nameplates of the greats like Ken Dryden and Guy Lafleur and Larry Robinson. It's an incredible place, and to have your name next to some of the hockey legends, I just think it's so exciting for all of us here in Minnesota, and the fact that I've known you now for the better part of a couple decades, and we've worked together. When I got the update that you and Natalie were going in, I could not have been more excited, and I can't wait to see it all play out next year.
Yeah, it's crazy when you say those names. It's still hard for me to process putting myself in that. You know what I mean? When you think, oh, your name will be up there with those players, it's hard to put yourself in that category, right? Because these are players that you looked up to growing, and you read about, and you watched, and you see highlights, and they just seem like in such a different, unachievable category as hockey players. So it's still hard to process. I think it's super cool, like you said, being able to go in with Natalie. So I mean, a lot of people have made it to the Hockey Hall of Fame, but not very many people get to go in with a teammate they grew up kind of playing with and being around. So that I think has an extra special feel to it as well.
So what's the summer been like for you and Johnny? Of course, Johnny Pohl, your husband, another hockey legend here in Minnesota. You guys got a bunch of kids running around the house. What is summer like for you, Krissy?
That's exactly what it is. It's a bunch of kids running around the house. No, it's been good. It's actually been kind of quiet since the draft. This is kind of our downtime. We both work at Hill Murray School, so being in a school, the summers are kind of nice. Just helping out with the girls' high school team. We do STP a couple days a week, and then my oldest turned 16, so now she is officially, we have a driver in the house. So that helps from the errands and running around, but it also changes life, and you realize how quick they grow up. So it's kind of the next step, but it's going to pick up here a little bit. My oldest is going to travel a little bit for hockey, and I'll go with her, and then once we get back, it's kind of go time here at school. So still trying to enjoy the rest of summer.
Yeah, and it goes quick right after the 4th of July in Minnesota. It's a downhill slide with our summers, especially if you work at a high school like Hill Murray. I remember those days when I was a Phi Ed teacher. Man, the end of summer comes quick. So enjoy it while you got it. The scout thing is really cool, too. I'd be remiss. You mentioned the draft a couple of times. You know, Cami Granado, kind of a trailblazer. We're seeing more and more women now involved in the National Hockey League. What's it been like to be an amateur scout for the Penguins?
Yeah, it's been great. For me, it's been awesome because I've been able to do it while I'm still here at Hill Murray. My kids are here, and I've been able to be with them, but still, and be mom and coach, but it's still keep my foot in the game a little bit and learn kind of a different part of the game, which has been awesome as well. And for me, it's just been a learning curve. This was my 3rd draft with Pittsburgh, and we've been through a couple managements now. So started with kind of Ron Hextall and Chris Pryor, now Kyle Dubas. So different management styles. So just learning from each of them. But it's been great. It's been super fun. It's nice to be local. Being in Minnesota, we're really lucky with having just the high school we have here, the players that come through the high school, and the USHL is not too far away, the colleges. So there's a lot of hockey to be watched without having to travel too much, and it's been fun to stay in the game.
When I think of the Penguins right now, currently, I think of Sidney Crosby, and I think of the great consistency in his game, and the similarities that you might have had to him, and the way you could change a game as soon as you hit the ice. What's it like trying to build a team around 87? I think there's got to be a message when you work for the Pittsburgh Penguins, especially now late in this guy's career, of what type of players you're looking for.
Yeah, I think he certainly sets a standard that's quite incredible, and he has for, like you said, numerous amount of years to do what he's done at his age, and the consistency to his game and the elevation that he brings other players' games to has been really fun to watch, and to even be out at training camp and the way he trains before the season and off season, and the standard he holds himself to, it's really it's even more impressive actually to see kind of being part of the organization than it is even from the outside. So from that standpoint, it's been fun. But yeah, we're certainly in a unique time, that's for sure. We're up there in age, and we have a core group that's a little bit older and still trying to build in and fill in, but trying to find those young kids. Kids we're finding now, it's there's such a time frame for them too. I think hockey's unique in that it's a little bit harder for kids to step right in at 18, 19, 20 as it is maybe in some of the other sports. So I think sometimes time is more of a friend to those players, and it takes a couple of years to develop, and you're projecting down the road as opposed to players and what their capabilities are as of right now.
And I'm always curious, Krissy, when you're a scout, and you look back at your playing days, and you were with and against some unbelievably talented players, and players develop at different ages, and there are certain tells, whether they go through a growth spurt early, whether they were ahead of the curve at a young age and now people are catching up, or the opposite, where you can maybe project, as you just mentioned, a kid that hasn't fully developed physically, and there might be some serious upside that other scouts are missing. How much do you tap into your time as a player when you get to see different players at different spots to kind of focus in on maybe some gems you can find for Pittsburgh for drafts this year and drafts beyond?
Yeah, and like you said, it's I'm learning a lot. I have by no means have any of the answers, and I think each year you do it, you learn a little bit more about yourself and the players, and even watching the players that I watched for the draft 3 years ago to see where their game has gone and players that we drafted and we didn't draft, but you had a chance to watch to see where they are now. I think is all helping in the process of learning. But like you mentioned, it's tough. I think it's real tough. It's not easy. You got kids that are different maturities, and hockey's so unique because there's just so many skill sets, right? You got kids that have been on the ice and been at every camp and have had all the training in the world and might be fully matured, right? So you're seeing maybe where their game is right now, and you might have a kid that hasn't had that same opportunities and training, and they just hit their growth spurt, so they're kind of haven't quite grown into their bodies, or they're a little bit later to finding some of the resources that some of these other kids have had. So each kid's super unique, but I do think at the end of the game, it's a game of hockey, and you're trying to find kids that have passion for the game, that love the game, that want to continue to get better and learn. I think those are some of the most important attributes and some of the great players that are in the game.
So let's go back to where your passion started. How did you fall in love with the game of hockey? What drew you to being a hockey player?
Yeah, it's so funny. I started so young, and I don't even know what it was. I think, part of it is I had an older brother that was 2 years older than me. So, I think if he maybe would have been more passionate about a baseball, who knows? We might have been talking baseball today. But I kind of just wanted to do everything he did. So I followed him around, and he would be at the rink, and he would let me tag along. And I just remember at 5 years old, just wanting to be at the rink and wanting to play. And I think just the speed of the game and every game's so different. Every shift is so different, and it changes all the time. And the challenge of each play and each game is so unique. You're just anticipating all over. But yeah, it was definitely started at a young age, and I played other sports, but hockey for sure was always the game that definitely was my first love and the sport I enjoyed playing the most.
And I vividly remember when I was a boys' high school coach at Mount View. We've had this conversation.
Yeah.
You were on the boys' varsity team at Park Center. And I know the game has changed since way back in the 90s, which is what I'm talking about. But how difficult was that to be in a locker room playing high school hockey with a bunch of dudes?
For me, it wasn't crazy, only because I had played with them since I was 5 years old growing up. So for me, I wasn't just the girl anymore. They treated me as just Krissy. And then so I think that's just such a credit to the community and the guys I grew up with. They were always incredibly inclusive, incredibly welcoming. They never singled me out or made me feel like I didn't belong on the team, which I think is a huge reason that I had such a love for the sport and was able to just enjoy it and play it. You'd certainly hear the outside noise from other teams, but within our own community, it was very welcoming. And even as it got tougher, by the time I got to high school, the size factor it catches up with you. I was maybe the tallest kid in Pee Wee's, and definitely was not the case by the time you're a freshman, sophomore year. But, the guys I grew up with were incredibly inclusive, and I think that was a huge part of why I had such a great experience.
And eventually you end up playing girls' high school hockey. You dominate on that stage, lead Park Center to a state championship. What are some of your memories from that time in your life?
Yeah, it's funny when you think of, whenever I think of like the girls' high school, I always think of the Coliseum and the fairgrounds. Too. And, I wish that more people had the opportunity to kind of experience that as a hockey rink, because it had, like, you walked in and it's like, I can just smell it, it just had like such a different vibe and unique. And so that's really, I think of the bus rides and the fun, unique experiences we had with some of my friends and teammates. And those are obviously great and special moments. But when I think of girls hockey and my experience, at least in high school, I think of the state tournament, and we were lucky enough to play in it for 2 years, and the smell of being in the Coliseum. And Park Center wasn't necessarily a hockey school. We were more of a basketball school. So to have as many people as we had to come out and support our team, some of those day games, we had so many people in the stands, and some knew about hockey, some didn't, but they were making a lot of noise, and we're just so excited to cheer on their team. So that's where probably some of my greatest memories are from playing girls high school.
Krissy, I vividly remember when you were a high school hockey player. I was coaching college hockey at St. Thomas, and watching your team play, you never left the ice, and rightfully so. From a leadership standpoint, how did you handle that, knowing that if you're going to play a bulk of the game, your team has a better chance to win, but some kids might not play as much?
It's funny, and it'll definitely show how far the girls' game has come. We literally just didn't have that many players. on our bench. So I don't know if you know this, but so when I graduated in 2000, it was Park Center. By 2 years later, we didn't even have a girls' high school team. It just turned into like North Metro because Park Center just did not have enough girls playing. So when everyone's like, oh, you didn't leave the ice or you played the whole game, it's like, that is true. But part of it is I think we dressed like 13 total players on our bench. So I think we had 4D, but really we played 3D because there was such a gap in terms of just the talent level, and kids had started to play maybe 2 or 3 years prior to being on the team. But my junior year, when we went out to try out, I remember like the first part of tryouts was literally like if you could stop, like you moved on to the second group. So the game has certainly come a long ways. I know Park Center was, we had some great players that also came through, but we just, in sheer numbers, we just didn't have that many numbers. But we had a great team. We had, I think we always looked at it as a team. It's funny, I played defense, so that's part of the reason I could kind of stay on the ice longer. Mm-hmm. I know Melitza McMillan, played at Breck, and they talked about her and stayed on the ice the same way, and it's a little bit easier when you're a D. You can kind of pace yourself a little bit, but the game has certainly come a lot further than it was before, where there's no way you could, a minute now is too long. So the game has certainly evolved, which is a great thing for the sport.
And you mentioned the evolution of the game, and I was taken back attending a final game in the PWHL Championship. What do you see from afar as you look at the way pro hockey has changed on the women's side and the potential that this league has?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I just think from a spectator standpoint, you had to wait until the U.S. played Canada to get a good game back in 2002 or whatever. You could see college was pretty good, but like you really had to wait till the countries played. I mean, now, like you said, we watch girls' high school games, and those are awesome games to watch. And like the college level is phenomenal hockey. The pro level is even another step. So I think just from a spectator standpoint, it's just such a fun game to watch. I think people that aren't around it and don't know, when they do come to watch, I think most of them leave the rink being like, wow, that was good hockey. They don't just say that was good girls hockey. That was just good overall hockey. And that's amazing to see. My kids always laugh. They're like, they'll ask Johnny, they say like, do you think I'm better than when mom was when she was like 22? And Johnny's like, oh, for sure. Where you were at like 12 years old is where mom was probably when she graduated college. So I think just in general, the girls' skill level, the speed, along with the boys as well, but the girls specifically, I think just the speed and the overall depth and the amount of kids playing at such a high level, it raises the bar. And just being a spectator now, it's really fun to watch.
You and Johnny have 3 daughters. What is the conversation like when they talk about maybe some of their dreams, if they want to be a Division I player down the road, or they want to dream about being a professional player in the PWHL? I can only imagine the experience that you and Johnny bring to the table helps, but how do you help them along the way when it comes to that type of thing?
Yeah, it's funny. So our oldest now is just finished her freshman year in high school. The other 2 they're still in middle school. Next year they'll be 10th grade, 8th grade, and 7th grade. So they're just kind of getting to those ages. My oldest one now has gone to some camps, so she's thinking about college, and I do know she would like to play after high school, wherever that is, and if she has the opportunity, I think she'd like to continue on. We try and really not talk a ton. We let them kind of drive the questions and answer questions and be there to support them. But I think for the most part, they're pretty driven kids. It's for us, we just don't want to make sure there's so much opportunity now, which is great for kids to play hockey. I think our biggest concern now is making sure they just don't play too much hockey. And because they play it all the time, which is great. They love it. But I just think you worry a little bit about the burnout now, because there is, for me, it was like you get to college, there wasn't a ton after college. And then I was done at 24, 25 because there just wasn't many places to play after that. And I think nowadays with the longevity of careers, which is so awesome, you just worry that you don't want them to play too much hockey, that they're burnt out and don't enjoy it by the time they're, 17, 18, 19 when they have these opportunities to play. So I think for us, we, more than anything, just try and make sure that we let them know, hey, that, play other sports, be a kid, get on the water, do other things. You can still play hockey, but it can't be your true full identity. You got to balance out a little bit.
I think it's such great advice, and I think so many kids these days are myopic to the one sport and don't look at the benefits of playing golf. I grew up playing baseball, dabbled in soccer. I was terrible, but my point is kids get focused on one and have that one set of friends and don't have another base of, whatever sport it might be, to have a different pocket of friends. You, however, did. I know you were a multiple sport athlete, and I want to circle back because it's baseball season to being the 5th ever girl at the time to play in the Little League World Series, and I believe you started at the catcher position, so you were kind of the quarterback of the whole operation. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, first of all, 12 years old, but and that was a product of my dad just taking our skates away. He just made us play other sports. It was like, you can play hockey in the winter, but once hockey season's over, I want you got to do something else. And so I ended up just playing baseball because I wanted to keep busy. My brother played it, and it's funny that you end up going to the Little League World Series and you meet a whole different group of kids. So none of those kids that I went to the Little League World Series with baseball for, none of them were my hockey teammates. So you met a bunch of different kids. You're playing with different kids, and you have different experiences, which for me I think was super important. And I think it's a huge part of my upbringing of why I didn't feel like I was burnt out at a young age. I do think it helped with injury prevention. Knock on wood, I was pretty lucky. I didn't have very many injuries, and I do think that's a product of playing multiple sports and not getting burnt out at a young age. But yeah, Little League World Series was my dad was the coach, so it's something kind of special for the two of us that we kind of always been able to share and have as a great memory for us.
As a kid, how nervous are you? Because I watch it every year. I love the Little League World Series, and I see those giant crowds in that complex, and I think of the nerves I had as a Little League baseball player with family and friends, like 20 people watching. For you as a kid, what was that like to step into the batter's box or crouch down behind the plate with that huge crowd, the television factor? That had to be overwhelming.
Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm getting PTSD just when you talk about it. I honestly think the Little League World Series, I might have been more nervous for that than maybe any sporting event I've ever played in. And part of it was, like you said, it was the first time I'd ever been around a big crowd. I'd ever had TV. It was during the baseball lockout was the year we went. And so I think it was the first year it really magnified. ESPN picked it up and aired it, and we had like all these like sponsorships coming in and giving us bats and batting gloves, and we thought we were like the coolest kids in the whole world. But then all of a sudden you get out in the field and you're like, okay, there's a huge crowd. There's TV cameras everywhere, and you're just trying to be a kid playing baseball. So to your point, I feel for those kids because I've been in those shoes, and it's hey, props to the kids that can go out there and perform at the top, because that is not easy to do as an 11, 12-year-old kid.
No, it's not. It's amazing. That is such a wonderful tradition on the sporting calendar for me. Like I said, I watch it every year. I'm fascinated by it, and it brings me back to when I was a kid and some of the nerves and butterflies that go along with being a Little League ball player. Speaking of nerves and excitement, we're leading into the Summer Olympics here this weekend. You represented your country a couple different times in the Olympics. What are these athletes, Krissy, feeling right now, a couple days in front of the opening ceremony, knowing that big stage they've been training for years, if not decades, is right upon them?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that's the hardest part, is just being able to contain all those emotions. As an athlete, for a lot of these athletes, they've been training and prepping for months and days and years in the making to get to this point. And then it's like you get there, you get to the opening ceremonies, and it's like, but then now you got to perform. You know what I mean? And so it's like all that preparation. It's like trying to be able to channel those emotions, but yet realizing like you're also there to compete. You're worried about your family that's traveling over, and did they make it safely, and do they have a good place to stay? And you're dealing with a time zone change and different living accommodations, but I think for me, the coolest part was being able to be on a team. I always say it's almost easier to be on a team sport because I feel for these athletes that are individual athletes that are just performing. They're just on their own. I feel like I was always so lucky because I had teammates to go through it with. I could chat and, you showed up on the ice, but you had a whole group of team with you in a locker room and on the ice that you could kind of share that experience with. It felt a little bit less pressure, I think, than some of these individual athletes that perform in individual sports.
What was the Olympic Village like in both your circumstances? Was it a cool place to be? Was there awesome food opportunities where you could go get some cool stuff? What did you take in the most away from the rink?
Yeah, well, my first Olympics was actually in Salt Lake City, which is, I mean, just to be able to make the Olympics is awesome, and then you get to compete right in your home country was pretty unique and special. But we stayed in the dorms, and I think it's the University like Utah. They were brand new dorms. You're just taking it all in. It was my first experience. You'd heard different experiences from some of your teammates that were in Japan in '98. But obviously a little bit different having it in the United States. But it was great. It was fun to just kind of be on campus, meet the other. So we were in a building and they had them kind of by country. So we were with a bunch of the other U.S. athletes, which I think was super cool. You could, support your other members from Team USA, the opening ceremony, and then the second one was in Italy. So that was pretty similar. I mean, we were pretty lucky. Our dorms and apartments were super nice. The food was great, lots of choices, lots of options, and in both places, the amount of volunteers that were there to help was phenomenal. It's really cool how many people came up and stepped up and were willing to help out. So I think those are pretty underappreciated and that people don't get to see. But there's tons of volunteers in each city and part of the U.S. and the host country that step up and make it really enjoyable for the athletes.
Krissy, in either circumstance, was there a sport outside of hockey that you went to go watch the athletes compete in that you were drawn to?
What's funny is so the Winter Olympics, they almost have like two different villages. So they have like where they do the skating, the hockey, and then they almost have like the skiing, bobsled, luge that are typically more like up in the mountains. So they're a little bit separate, but I remember when we were in Lake Placid where we trained up at the training center, the ski jumpers were always there. So I never got to see them compete like live at the Olympics, but I remember we would go, their little ski jumping area was right pretty close to where our village was when we were training, and the bobsledders and the lugers. So it was super fun to kind of get to know those guys and then be able to watch them kind of do their practice runs. Just the ski jumpers, I remember being so crazy and super fun to watch. But I never got to see them compete live. I only got to see them when they were doing their trials and their training in Lake Placid.
Yeah, it just feels like it'd be a whirlwind. You got practice, you've got ice time, you've got different meetings, you've got games. Obviously, you're tied up in what you're doing. So I was just kind of curious. So let's go back to before you got to play for the red, white, and blue. You chose to play for the maroon and gold, the Golden Gophers. What was that process like? You were the 2000 Ms. Hockey Award winner, so you had options. You could probably play anywhere you wanted in the country. How many schools did you have it down to? And in the end, why did you choose the U of M?
Yeah, it's actually funny. My experience was actually kind of unique. So I actually graduated high school in 2000 from Park Center, but then I actually didn't start at the Gophers until fall of 2002. So they did an Olympic training year because the Olympics were in 2002. So I went right from graduating high school at Park Center. We moved out to Ben Smith, who was the coach of the Olympic team, took 25 of the women's ice hockey players. We moved out to Lake Placid, and we actually trained for 2 years, leading right up to Salt Lake City. So I actually almost had like a gap year, a couple gap years, which they always say, like I was like the guy who played juniors for 2 years and then started college when I turned 21. So I think for me, I didn't make my college decision in high school. Once I realized I was going to go out and play in Lake Placid, I actually just kind of postponed making my college decision until I was closer to when I was going to actually go into college. But for me, Minnesota was an easy choice. I'd been away from home for 2 years. I had a sister that was maybe in like third grade at the time, third grade. She's a lot younger. My brother had played at the Gophers. But my dad did make me take 4 official visits when I was in high school. Just even though I knew I kind of wanted to go to the U, he was like, just make sure, check out your visits, really do a thorough, check out other schools. And I'm glad he made me do that because it really, I think for me, it solidified where I wanted to go. And I was able to see other campuses and feel real assured about my decision. But I think for me, it was the location and the fact that Ritter was going to be brand new. My freshman year was the first year that it opened up and we were able to have our own rink. Being able to play with kids that I had grown up playing with, the Broats and Natalie and the Curtins, and just being able to wear the same jersey as them. And my brother had also gone to that school. I think made it for a real easy choice for me. But I certainly enjoyed, I took a visit to a couple other schools that were we're kind of up and going, and glad I was able to do that. But for me, Minnesota was just felt like the right fit, and it felt like coming home.
I love that you said gap years are like junior hockey because it's very similar. And then you got to train in that magical place where Miracle on Ice took place. What was it like being there for 2 years in Lake Placid?
It was crazy. I mean, it's funny when I look back. I'm actually going back there with my oldest here. I have not been back there since I trained there. Well, since probably before the '06 Olympics. I haven't been back there in almost 20 years. But my oldest has got a camp out there in a week, so I'm heading back out there. I haven't been back there in a long time. It'll be interesting, but really cool because I have so many memories. But to your point, it's such a unique rink because of all of the history behind it, and I think for us to be able to practice there every day and train there was such an opportunity. I think I struggled a little bit because I was so young, and for me it was I was pretty naive kid, like family, everything was right here in Minnesota. So for me, I think the most difficult part was just being able to move away from home. All my friends graduated from college, they went into dorms or went into college, were kind of other players around them had kind of had that same experience of that freshman year. And for me, it was a little bit harder because I didn't have that. Like there was, a couple other kids my age, but there was a lot of kids that were, a lot older or had already been through college, a lot of the team that we were training with. So I think just being away from home, training full time, we talked about being multiple sport athlete. I mean, I'd been playing multiple sports and now it was just hockey, 24/7 for 6 straight months. So I think for me, it was a learning curve. It was an unbelievable experience. I had to grow up a lot. But I think anybody and everybody, we always tell our kids at some point, I think it's good for you to get away from home. It makes you appreciate coming back, but it also, I think, just the life experience you get from growing up and living away. I think that was a real unique time, but certainly helped in my personal growth.
I spent some time at Lake Placid about 5 or 6 years ago. I was on vacation at Saratoga Racetrack in upstate New York, made the drive down to see Lake Placid. Miracle on Ice had a huge impact on my life. It still is the greatest sporting event I've ever watched, but I was blown away, Krissy, by how small that town is. I can't believe they hosted the Winter Olympics. That place is tiny.
It's crazy. It's cool though, and I'm excited to go back because it's exactly that. It's just this little town, but I think it's cool because they've done updates, but for the most part, it's very unique to what it has. And I'm not sure if you were able to see this either, but they have like the 1932 rink as well, where they had the Olympics.
Yep.
And so when we weren't on the 1980 rink, we were actually skating in we had games in the 1932 rink. So, I mean, just the history, they do a really good job of having like a little museum around it. And the town is so proud to be an Olympic host and like you said, the history behind it. It's an awesome place to visit. If anybody's never been there, it's such a great town, like you mentioned, and it's super cool to be able to see what you see on TV and then be able to see it live in person because there's some parts that look exactly the same. So it's really cool.
What I'm excited about is the next 5 to 10 years, for your life. You're going to watch your kids all come through and graduate and go on to college. That's a really cool experience for a parent. But then the opportunities that you're going to have, you're already involved in scouting at the NHL level. You've got the P-Dub going strong right now. You're at Hill Murray. Administration teaching's an option there. You've been a great coach. There'll be options there to do that. You could be a GM. You could be involved in the NHL side. When you look at, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, is there any place that you see yourself navigating towards, or are you going to just let it all come to you?
It's funny you asked that. Like, I think I've asked myself and probably had to reflect on that more and more. Because I think for me, I've been such in mom mode and just not survival, but you know how it is with kids. Your life becomes theirs, and so you're just doing everything you can to provide for them and give them the experiences and just be there for them. And as they get older and get more independent, I start to think about that. And, like you mentioned, I've been super blessed and I'm incredibly grateful for a lot of the experiences and opportunities, being in the school, coaching, being around kids here, and now getting my feet a little bit wet with the, being in the NHL. And like you mentioned, the PWHL is going strong. I would love to stay involved in the game. I still have a ton of passion for the game. I love to be around it. I love to help and be around and be of any kind of support to kids that are involved. where that takes me, I don't know that I have a definite direction right now, but I'm certainly appreciating and enjoying the experiences, and kind of trying to figure out, what is it next that I would like to do, because like you mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities.
And it's just, I think of you and Johnny being parents, and you guys are both such humble, kind human beings. I've known you both for so long. I have to ask behind the scenes because I'm so curious. I think we might have had this conversation when we did some broadcasting together at Valley Sports, but who's the good cop and who's the bad cop when you're parenting those girls?
We should ask the kids this. It's funny. I would say when they were younger, I was for sure probably the more the disciplinarian. I had them on a schedule. I had 3 kids in 3.5 years. So just in order to survive, I felt like I had to have such a schedule, and he was working and I was home. But I think as they get older, it's funny. I was driving with my other one the other day, and my oldest one, we were in the car, and Johnny and my younger two are up north with some family. So it's just me and my older one for the next couple of days before we join them. And she was like, Mom, I thought you were going to be the tougher parent, but she's like, it's Dad. Dad now texts me like curfew times and where are you? And, and they're all great kids. So, I mean, when I say we're tough, it's not that tough. We've been really blessed, but I think it's kind of changing a little bit. I don't know if it's a daddy and his daughters type thing where I think he's now thinking, oh my word, I have girls and how am I going to keep them? I don't know. But it's a good question. I think it's kind of evolved, but it'd be interesting to ask the kids that.
Well, I just think you're both so kind. You're probably both good cops, but like you said, there's different degrees in every situation, and I'm certain the kids are going to be great because of it. But, knowing you and Johnny as long as I had, I can't see either one of you guys being really the bad cop. So I had to ask the question.
Well, thankfully we haven't had. I'm hoping we don't have to have a bad cop. I'm hoping maybe I'm banking too much on. Hopefully our kids will make good choices. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. Our youngest one, Lucy, she goes by Moose. I feel like she needs a few more bumpers. So she might be saving the last might be giving us the biggest amount of trouble. But I'll get back to you on that.
Let's go back to the Stanley Cup real quick, and then we'll kind of put a wrap on it with our hat trick hot seat. But, I think as hockey fans, the Stanley Cup is another tradition that's on the calendar. It gets later and later into the summer. For you and Johnny, how much time do you spend watching the playoffs? Your schedule's incredibly busy. Do the kids get into it? As you look back at the Florida Panthers and the run they had, did you have a chance to dive in at all?
Oh, my gosh. We were the Pohl family was glued to the TV. It was fun. I think that's kind of the cool thing about hockey too. It can kind of draw you in. So for us, like with so many different activities going on, I feel like, if there's a big hockey game going on, you'll find all 5 of us in the living room or in the basement watching the game. But it was, I think this year probably had an extra special meaning, just because Paul Maurice coached Johnny for 3 years in Toronto. So he coached Johnny in the Marlies in the AHL, and then when he moved up and coached the NHL, Johnny moved up with him to the Maple Leafs. So I think Johnny felt a little bit of a connection there, and was personally cheering for him, and he really enjoyed his time when he played for him. And so I know Game 7, actually, I had just flown to Vegas, so I actually watched Game 7 in Vegas, and I was kind of FaceTiming and on the phone with the kids, and we were all watching because they were at home. So I don't know, that was... I mean, what a special run. It's funny because we wanted, everybody, you had your teams that you were hoping were going to win, but we were just almost excited that it went to a Game 7 just because we were so excited for more hockey. Like, we almost didn't want it to end. So I think if you ask the Pohl family, definitely, we're definitely watching the playoffs, and we thoroughly enjoy playoff hockey.
And I think the connection to Paul Maurice is interesting because there's a video that went viral on social media, and he looked into the camera and gave maybe a 60-second spiel on what this meant to him and his family. And he was talking to his mom and dad about the journey and the passion he had in that 60 seconds. If you didn't get choked up, then you clearly don't understand the magnitude of the Stanley Cup. I hope Johnny had a chance to see that. I'm not sure if you did, but Paul Maurice, to me, kind of stole the show in the aftermath there in that celebration.
For sure, and I think, and Johnny actually mentioned that. I think there was times I was texting Johnny. I'm like, Are you okay? Because I think he was so nervous watching it because I think he wanted it so bad for Paul, just because he knew the influence that Paul had on his career, and as he coaches, there's so many similarities where where Johnny feels like, Paul has an influence even on how he coaches now and how he handles things, and even phrases that he uses where he's like, oh, that's totally, something I learned from Paul Maurice. So for sure, Johnny felt that connection. I know he was watching, and he probably would even say he was a little bit emotional, but I definitely know exactly what you're talking about, and I know that we were watching that as well. It's pretty cool, and you see players and coaches, and you see them in their uniforms, or you see them coach and you see them playing, but I think to be able to get behind the scenes and see the true passion and the commitment and the dedication and what it really means to not only the players and the coaches, but like you mentioned, their families and their parents, it's really cool when you get to see those moments.
Yeah, it's what draws us all in as hockey fans. Doesn't matter if it's a PW championship or the Stanley Cup, you're drawn to it because you love the game. And I figured you guys were watching. I didn't know with the kids and the schedule if it allowed, but that makes me happy that there was a distinct connection to that coach for Johnny, and the fun that the Florida Panthers were having. You kind of live vicariously through them. All right, Krissy, we're to the very final part of the show, the Hat Trick Hot Seat. 3 quick questions, top of the head answers from the heart. There's no wrong answer. It's your life. So we're kind of digging into kind of you behind the scenes. I'll start with this one. For me, it's an easy answer. It's a movie theater. But when things are stressful and I need to check, or you need to go somewhere to chill in Minnesota, what do you do to get away from the chaos of being a parent and all these jobs you have? Your favorite chill spot in Minnesota?
The golf course. I like to golf with my girlfriends.
Oh, that's awesome. Where do you play?
Prestwick, right here in Woodbury. I'm actually in a league on Wednesdays, but I end up playing more. But it's my, there's no hockey talk. There's no work talk. It's just super fun, relaxing, and I love it. I look forward to it every week.
What a cool answer, and I love that golf course. All right, second question would be the first concert you attended. I want to know the venue and the musician or band that you went to go see. We're probably going back to the 90s. I didn't go to many
concerts when I was younger. I actually think it might have been Kenny Chesney when I was in college at the XL Energy Center, and I went with a bunch of my college hockey teammates.
Would that been around 06?
I think it was. It might have been 05. Yeah, right around there. Maybe a little earlier, 04, 05 maybe.
I've probably seen him 15 times, and the first time I saw him was either 05 or 06 at the X, and I was drawn in. He is an unbelievably good performer, and his music, it's all made for a big concert venue. So I'm sure I was there the same time you were. That makes me smile a little bit. Okay, favorite travel destination when you're not working? I know you've been everywhere around the world as a hockey player and now a scout, but if you're just going to go have, whether it's just you and Johnny or you guys and the kids, your favorite travel destination?
I'm going to have to go with Hawaii. We haven't been able to bring the kids there, Johnny, and I've been there a couple of times. Johnny and I went there for our honeymoon, but we like Florida a lot, but I think ultimately I would take Hawaii. Love it. Love the beaches. Love to be able to golf, but definitely Hawaii.
That's a really cool answer. I got to get there. It's one place on my bucket list I have not been. Final thing, and we'll let you go, and I really appreciate you being a part of the show today. Have you had a chance now to look forward to the experience of what that Hall of Fame introduction is going to be all about, and being a part of the hockey history on that night, the induction ceremony? Has it sunk in, or have you yet to kind of come to grips with that whole thing?
No, I think the excitement of the people around me is really getting me excited. My parents got their passports and they're ready to go. My brother and his wife are going to come up. My sister's having a baby in September, but is going to try and come up. And then my kids and my family are going to come up. So I think it'll be really special to be able to have those people with me, and just have the experience of all being together. Sometimes it takes a special moment to get everybody to block their schedules and all get together. So definitely looking forward to that. I can tell you I'm definitely a little bit more nervous. I'm not a huge public speaker and love speeches, so I try and push in that speech and the thought of having to talk in front of that many people to the back of my mind, but certainly looking to enjoying just spending that weekend with my family and those around me.
Well, just know that all of us that have been lucky enough to come in contact with you and call you friends here in the Twin Cities will be watching, and we're also very proud of you. It's just an incredible honor, a well-deserved honor, and I can't wait to take it all in, and really want to thank you today, Krissy, for being a part of the show. I know your schedule, even in the summer, is busy, and I just thought with the Hall of Fame coming, rather now get you in now before it gets too close during the hockey season. So appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me on. Always great talking to you.
So much fun. Krissy Wendell-Pohl going into the Hockey Hall of Fame next fall/winter. We can't wait to take it all in, and I'll be back after a short break here to put a close on the show here on the Talk North Podcast Network. Okay, we are back to close the show here on Wooden Sticks, and as advertised, you could feel just what a sweet person and just humble star Krissy Wendell-Pohl is. You could get that through that 40 minutes or so of hockey talk we just had, and her and Johnny raising these girls and coaching hockey and all the different things they do in our community. They're just great people, and so excited to see them take that all in at the Hall of Fame in Toronto. And fun to hear those stories of the Olympics. We're kind of thinking about the Olympics right now, even though it's the Summer Olympics. It's our, for me anyway, second favorite Olympic season. I love the Winter Olympics first and foremost, but it's really cool, right, to see these athletes come together and, these next couple days building into this opening weekend and how it all plays out. She had a chance to do that not once but twice, and then I love to hear the time that she spent training for those first Winter Olympics up in Lake Placid, having been there now and having that great memory and looking back at 1980 and what the Miracle on Ice has meant. It's a special place, and she kind of used that as her time to get ready for college, and then did great things wearing the maroon and gold. And fun to tap into little Kenny Chesney as well, one of my very favorite performers. As I mentioned, I've been to, I think, 15 of his concerts. Russo has his Trampled by Turtles. They're incredible. He's got the backstage access and all the great stuff. For the intro song for his pod, we're all on the same team here. Kenny Chesney's one of my very favorites, and he loves that football, right? And I'm a big football fan, and it's now become a kind of a thing with Kenny Chesney. We just saw him here a couple months ago, and he'll put the helmet on of whatever NFL team stadium he's in. And when we were at the concert over at the Viking Stadium, of course, KOC was up on that stage during one of the encore songs, and they had the signed helmet. They gave it to one of the kids in the first row, and during the week leading up to the concert at US Bank Stadium, of course, Kenny Chesney's doing updates from all over the stadium and tweeting out a bunch of pictures. So that was fun too. But fun to see that we were probably at that concert at the same time, her and her friends. And she's a little bit of a golfer. I used to be a golfer. I now just play fantasy golf, but it's fun that that's one of her spots to go out and get a chill on in Minnesota. Great time to do it as we are in the heart of golf season here locally. So again, thank you to Krissy for being a part of the show, and thank you for listening today and taking in Wooden Sticks. As I mentioned at the start of the show, we're looking forward to having the great Al Stalock with us next week, one of the great puck-playing goaltenders in the history of the league. That guy had skills, man, all kinds of skills. Probably could have scored more goals. He'll tell you why he didn't. He'll probably blame Mikko Koivu if I know him. He and Koivu had kind of a behind-the-scenes back and forth that was pretty damn funny, and Stalock's so outgoing and Koivu's so stoic. You can only imagine some of the good times that were had in the locker room with those two clowns. But that'll be next week, and that'll all be a part of the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Gorgomatic21 if you want to ping me and recommend some guests to have here as the summer progresses into the fall. Make that known. And if you want to be a part of the show, we'd love more sponsors on the show. They drive Wooden Sticks. They drive Talk North. And there's only one person that can get that done for you. That's Karen Cleary at kcleary at talknorth.com. Kcleary at talknorth.com. If you want to be a part of the show, we'd love to have you. Thanks again for listening to Wooden Sticks. I'm Kevin Gorg. We'll be right back at you next week with Al Stalock.